can increase the capacity of the sewer collection system. Thing in English. It's also published on the website. Please note that our collection system is adequate, but the quantity with all the new development, it's a big challenge. And there's three reports that there's mentioned. Mr. Chris Kella will get more into details. He will give you an overview, and then if you have any question, it will be a pleasure to answer them.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors.
Sure,
Thank you for
sure.
having me today. I thought I'd present a very brief presentation of all the presentations we've recently presented to the commission, and some of these might have actually been presented previously to town council as well. So stop me if anything kind of jumps out at you. Presentation outline. So we'll first look at some recent projects the commission is looking at working on or have recently completed, such as an overview of the new GSC wastewater treatment plant, overview of the sewer system master plan, long-term study. This is basically the new secondary trunk sewer proposal, and an overview of an ongoing I&I studies that the GSC is continually doing. So, and that we'll follow that with some questions. So first, we have the new GSC wastewater treatment plant. This project was initially conceptualized previously by previous GSSC studies. GSSC has been working on this since approximately 2014. We initiated this with some environmental impact assessments that outlined that some work needed to be done for the outfall, which then led to an understanding that if we're going to do all this work for the outfall, we should look at the entire system as a whole and make sure that we are planning correctly for the future. So the commission thought ahead and initialized some studies that got us to where we are today. So, and also got us the $53 million, well, not yet, but the $53 million advanced wastewater treatment facility funded federally, provincially, and by GSC as well. Improved environmental and water quality projections to continue to meet and exceed the approval to operate requirements with the commission. Long-term design life for the theoretical full build-out of the current Shediac sewer shed basin. Approximately construction time period is about 3 to 4 years as soon as it gets kicked off. So as you can see here in the picture, this was the initial concept of the building. You also have the new aerated lagoons along with the layout of the yard piping, the headworks facility, force main, future MBBR and disc filters, which will provide additional treatment when required by environment. Treatment process. The treatment process will remain more of a lagoon type facility, as that is one of the best systems to deal with fluctuations in inflow or high volume or changes in flows, and it keeps the treatment moving, whereas a full mechanical treatment facility wouldn't be ideal for the GSSC, as the flows changed quite dramatically, whether it's when it's wet or dry. So we felt continuing with a lagoon type treatment facility was the best approach. So first off, you start with the collection, you move to influent pumping stations, then screening. Like down here, you'll see bar screens, large grit removal centrifuges, and then you'll go to the floating aeration system at the future MBBR, which is additional treatment for ammonia, followed by disc filters, which also is additional treatment for ammonia, and then followed by UV treatment that would then be pumped to the Northumberland Strait. The projected flows for this facility start from our development. The average flow for 25 years is 14,900 meters cubed per day, with a peak flow of that 25 years at 42,180 meters cubed per day, and a peak flow for 50 years of 63,950 meters cubed per day. And we developed that in previous studies by understanding at the time the full build-out estimates for Shediac. So this at the time was the flows we projected at that at that time and how the facilities would look after that. So the equipment will be designed for 25-year flow. And the major infrastructure will be designed for 50 years, such as the building, the yard piping, the lagoons, any major, the pumping stations, anything major would be developed for a 50-year design life. So that would be the treatment plant current project status that we're looking at. So funding for phase one, which is the headworks right here, where you see in the red, has been approved by both the federal, provincial, and GSSC. So funds are in place for that. However, GSSC does not want to move ahead, obviously, until we have the full funding where we can complete the project and make sure the treatment is fully correct. So GSC is presently waiting for confirmation of funding approval for phase two lagoons, and piping for approximately $30 million. Upon approval, both projects will have a small redesign and will be re-tendered to proceed with the full project.
So you'd be proceeding with phase one and two, like
It
not at the same time, but
There's a
within the same scope,
within the same time frame,
Okay.
within the same
beginning and end.
beginning and end. Yes.
All right.
Overview of the sewer system master plan. So the commission initiated a project in order to. So we initiated a project in order to understand the entire system. So essentially, what we did is we took all the information we had within GSC's sanitary sewer system, the inverts, the lengths, and put them in a giant model. So that way we can understand where the restrictions are in the system by just inputting flows wherever we need. So we first understand what the current flows are. And for example, if a new development comes in, we can just point mark where we want to put that new flow, and it will identify where the restrictions are through the entire system. So it's no longer a guessing game where the commission is not 100% sure, because it's a complicated process without a model. It's very hard to do. It's very time consuming. It's very costly. This was a very good project for the commission to have, and a program for the commission to have, so that they can simply send me an email. There's a development happening here. Here's the flows provided by the developer. Let's plug them in. Let's see how it affects the system. And then we can report back within 15 minutes that you'll have a potential issue in this area. So,
Or not. Yeah.
so we used data from multiple sources, represents the collection system. Flows were estimated by counting house units and reviewing non-residential loads, calibrated using the GSCC's existing SCADA system, which gives us all the information from all their lift stations. We can monitor trends, flows, pumping flows, and we can really calibrate the theoretical flows. We can also meter the flows. So we have flow meters that we can put in specific locations that can provide us accurate flows. So we can test that against our model and make sure that we're calibrated correctly. Just grab a drink. So that was also helpful from previous studies where we had multiple INI studies in multiple areas of the town, where we could run a model based on theoretical flows, go back to the INI studies that we had, and look at do these flows correlate with what we previously picked up in real time. So that was very useful. System deficiencies and constraints from sewer CAD models. So basically, we're looking at, this is what we call a hydraulic profile. And when we input it in the model, we can see that where this blue line is, that's your hydraulic grade line. Obviously, if that surpasses the ground elevation, then you know that you have potential issues and you have surcharging of the pipe. So the model spits all that out and produces plans similar to this. So this drawing here is showing various colors through the piping network. This is the existing system as we currently are using it. This is the so we plugged it all in, run the model, and these are all the red you're seeing is basically potentially surcharging pipes or nearing surcharge. So most of the red you'll see here is in the existing trunk sewer. This was something known even when we did the trunk sewer. We were fully aware that that trunk sewer would surcharge based on its grades and its depth. So it was known that it would surcharge because of the INI in Shediac, and the original report for that trunk sewer states that I would have to be reduced for the surcharging in this trunk sewer to be alleviated. And then you can see there's yellow, which is, these are about 50% approaching surcharging. So not quite critical by any means, but something to keep an eye on. And then you have the green, which is basically all is good, and no issue with surcharging yet. You can also see all the lift stations on this plan. So GSCA has a roughly around 24 lift stations. They're not all in this picture, but you can see that they have quite a bit. So all these lift stations pump basically on top of each other until it reaches the wastewater treatment plant or the trunk sewer. So the next slide I'm going to show you is it was a full build out model. So you can see that the problem actually gets a little more exaggerated. And again, more of the issues run into the trunk sewer, and you can see there's a potential issue down Ohio Road that eventually discharges to the trunk sewer as well. So anytime we want to put, say, for example, if there's a development up by the highway somewhere and we want to input a flow right here, well, we could dump in 200 liters per second, whatever the flow is from the development. It will then run through the entire model until it reaches its final discharging location. And we can see that, okay, there's a problem down Sebastian Street, for example, or Main Street that should be addressed prior to this development moving forward. Long-term study, and this would be the new secondary trunk sewer. This followed that previous study because we did notice that, yes, the trunk sewer is potentially surcharging, and it may be a good idea to just have a general idea of where a secondary relief trunk sewer could land in Shediac. So project initially conceptualized in the sewer master plan study, which I just mentioned. Recently, there has been significant development pressure in this study area. So again, this was part of the initial study. We did this little drawing, and in the report that can, as Joey mentioned, you can find on the website, we initially gave a preliminary understanding of where you could put a new trunk sewer that could also potentially alleviate West Shediac by bypassing all of the existing system and pumping with this yellow line to the new trunk sewer, following to discharge to the wastewater treatment plant. This project aims to enable development while providing the second west-east trunk sewer option for West Shediac. See here, we've all these are showing all the development, the known developments. It's showing potential development areas, and we basically categorize the flows by the zoning in those areas so that it could be incorporated into the model. Trunk sewer existing conditions. Again, this is from previous reports, so you can see that the trunk sewer is all red and has potential of surcharging. Recent development plans triggered this study so that we could look at it a little further and understand where we could align a new trunk sewer towards the starting at the highway and moving itself down to Ohio Road, down to Main Street, and then to the trunk sewer. Without future developments, however, upgrades for the existing system are not necessarily required. The trunk sewer still operates as it should, even though it is surcharged, but it was designed for that. So trunk sewer alignment, as I mentioned, so it spans from the existing wastewater treatment plant to the Veterans Highway. Alignment selected to minimize private property land acquisition. So a lot of the property is on right of way, and we also run through the trail as well. So that's property that is still towns, but it's a little easier to acquire for this project. Maximum depth we kept at 5.5 meters, replacing existing infrastructure along the alignment. So what I mean by that is where we can grab existing sewer and take that flow away from the existing system, we grabbed. So if there's potential for us to collect existing areas, we've allowed for that with the depth of the sewer. That would also alleviate more of the existing system so that you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. And the only intent here is for trench restoration, and I mentioned that because that's kind of where the estimate, if the town were to kind of piggyback on this, do some water main work or whatever, it would change the cost estimate, obviously. Servicing area. So area serviced by gravity, which is the green. So all of this green would be serviced by the gravity trunk sewer you see in blue right there. The outlined with black are existing sewer infrastructure that is already being discharged into the existing system that can potentially go to the new trunk sewer. So that's why that's outlined in a different color, so that you can know that those areas could be redirected to the new trunk sewer base because of the depth and the grades that we've allowed. The red is the total area that could be pumped to the new trunk sewer from lift station number 3, which is at the end of
Dock Street.
Dock Street. Yes, I knew that. One thing this picture isn't showing quite correctly that we've made changes in the report is that the red actually extends past the highway. So it grabs the whole area where future development was also planned for the town, as far as whether it was commercial or industrial. So that's also included. So basically everything west of Fosh Bridge and including this area east of Fosh Bridge as well. For a total flow of 491 liters per second. So to put that in perspective, currently GSSC receives on average roughly about 500 liters per second at the wastewater treatment plant. So this would basically be like a whole new trunk sewer is what it is. So little closer view here. So we also categorize the existing lift station, the proposed trunk sewer areas located from the existing trunk sewer. So there's flow here from known developments as well. So we've incorporated that as well. Serviced units. So we looked at this in a way of how can we relate this to the units that it's servicing. Each sewer shed gravity area versus lift station 3 and lift station 4. So when I say gravity area, I'm referring to the area near the gravity pipe. And when I say lift station 3 and lift station 4, that's basically everything pumped coming from the Fosh Bridge area. No residential future development was converted to, non-residential future development was converted to equivalent residential units for comparison purposes. The proposed infrastructure would service a significant portion of the overall new development area in the town. So, for example, the existing serviceable units would be 282 units. That is for so we have there's planned developments that we knew of, and then there was future developments that we aren't fully aware of what could potentially be developed there. So again, we went off the zoning area and used the appropriate equations to come up with the amount of units per that area.
Okay.
And that gives us basically a total of 15,000 units would be serviced with this trunk sewer. And then we've separated it, categorized it by color coding. And again, this is all in the report as well. So to break this down for that gravity pipe, basically we're looking at a gravity future development. It would be at roughly 32% of the flow in that pipe. The current existing gravity would be about 5%, for example. So if you put that pipe in now, you would only get 24 liters per second in that pipe without adding any of the development. If you add the existing pumped, which would be everything from Fosh Bridge that's currently going to lift station 3 and 4, that would be about 38% of the flow in that pipe. And if you add all the potential new development over by the West Shediac, you would be adding additional 25% to the pipe. This kind of gives an overview of what is contributing to the size of the pipe. Also included.
I'm almost scared to ask how big is it, but anyway,
it's about the same size as the existing
current one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I can, but it's about 900 to 750, so it's about 900 millimeter pipe. Lift station upgrades. So we also incorporated, in order to get that flow to the existing trunk, we would have to upgrade lift station 3 significantly. So it's a challenging area to upgrade to those depths. You're right along the water. It's a rather large and deep wet well. So size to accommodate flows from a lot of the lift stations near Fosh Bridge. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, 14, and 15. Total flow of approximately 300 liters per second would enter this facility and would be pumped using a 600 millimeter HDPE force main up Riverside Drive to the highway and then to the trunk sewer. We evaluated two options. Option one was to eliminate lift station 2, which is over behind Napa. And currently right now, Napa or lift station 2 pumps under Fosh Bridge and then discharges into a gravity pipe and then goes to lift station 3. Our dream was to alleviate lift station 2 and not have to pump it. We would go by gravity. We ran the exercise, but it drives the pipe way too deep. We're about just on the Napa side, we'd be roughly 11 meters deep in the road just to set up a drill punch a gravity pipe that would have to go under the water. And by the time it reached lift station 3, you're roughly 18 meters deep. And that's near the coast. And then you have to allow for a certain depth of water over top of the big pumps to keep them cool. So then it drives it even further, about another 4 meters deeper than that. So you're getting into like special excavation and a lot of risk. And I'm not even going to mention the number. So we went
a quick exit to China.
Yeah, it was a pretty easy move to the main option was to continue to pump it. What we did when we installed a newer force main 5 years ago, roughly 6 years ago, we put a force main under Fosh Bridge, but we also encased it in a much bigger pipe, knowing that obviously growth is going to happen. So in the event that growth does happen, you can pull the 200 pipe out of the 400, and you can use the casing pipe as the force main.
The pipe
So you don't have to drill it again.
Huh.
Another thing too, additional land would be required for the lift station itself. And when the other option that we were looking at for gravity, we would also, if we went with that route, which we decided not to, but we'd also have to acquire a private property and a house as well so that we can go straight to the lift station. Force main alignment. So again, this is from lift station 3, which is right here on Dock Street, follows Riverside Drive and connects to the proposed trunk sewer on Veterans Highway, aims to avoid recently reconstructed roads. So Riverside Drive is one of the only roads left in that area that hasn't been recently reconstructed besides Winter, but Winter wasn't a good candidate to run a force main. We figured that Riverside Drive was a nice direct route to the highway, and once you got to the highway, it'd be fairly easy drilling to the starting or the initial start of the trunk sewer, which is over right in front of the jail, basically. Okay. And the jail can actually also be serviced by gravity across the highway to the trunk sewer as well, if it were to change. Right now, the jail basically goes by gravity roughly here and then crosses the highway. So we could cross it here as well and alleviate it going into the existing system.
Okay.
Trunk sewer phasing. So we looked at this as far as two options for phasing. What we wanted to do is make sure that we designed the gravity pipe big enough so that if GSC ever did decide to do lift station 3 upgrades, make sure they're prepared for West Shediac development. They could do that at any time later on. The first phase would obviously be construction of the main trunk sewer. So that would service everything it wanted to service. But then in the future, you'd have the option to bypass the existing system and get the force main there. So we would look at environmental protection, which would be a large aspect to the construction of that gravity pipe because it does go through several provincially significant wetlands. So we expect there would be environmental impact assessment required as well. Which may take 6 months to a year to get through because it does require some public consultations and go through the process. Then we begin the earthworks, sanitary sewer system. This trunk sewer would also remove a lift station, which is at the top of Bellevue Heights. Yeah.
Okay.
So that lift station could be completely removed because we bring the gravity sewer right through it.
Okay.
So that's one lift station gone. And my main goal as the consultant for GSC is to remove all his lift stations, but some of them I just can't do. Stormwater management restoration as well. So as we're going, this trunk sewer follows along the trail, which as you know, follows also a small little brook. So we'd have to maintain some restoration as well along the brook, roadway, and then trail restoration. Phase 2, again, force main, lift station upgrades, again, environmental protection, earthworks, sanitary force main, lift station 3 upgrades. decommissioning of the old lift station 2 and lift station 3 connection. And also we would take lift station 4 and reroute it. Currently lift station 4 pumps itself to the existing trunk sewer, which is by DSS.
Yeah.
We would have it redirected from Main Street downwards to back down to lift station 3, which then now we're taking also that flow and we're taking it to lift station 3 and then taking it, bypassing the whole system, taking all that flow out of the existing trunk sewer. So as I showed before, the existing trunk sewer is red because of surcharge. We believe if we take all this flow away, that now drops down to a yellow. So then we're alleviating the existing system. The cost. Excluding HST, based on our recent bids, the new trunk sewer itself is about 9 million. Lift station, the bigger upgrade would be the lift station upgrades, which includes the force main at 25 million, with a total construction cost of roughly 34 million. We currently have a fairly large contingency on there of 20%, so 6.8 million just for odds and ends, engineering services and engineering management and design during construction. This would likely take about 2 or 3 years for full build out.
Okay.
Cost analysis. So when we look at the cost analysis per unit, if say somebody wanted to look at this in this sense, if you wanted to look at just the gravity only, with the units that it would service, so the total cost of 11,000. This is including splitting up engineering and the other things, so it's a little different. But 11 million would service 8,300 units at a cost of $1,300 per unit. Phase 1 with gravity and pumped, so it's still service 8,300 units at a cost of 12 million. So, and that would be about $1,400 per unit. And phase 2 would be the whole project, servicing all the units. Oh, sorry, phase 2 would just be near Fosh Bridge, so that would be that work over there. And you're looking at that's only servicing 5,200 units on that side at a cost of $6,300 per unit if you were to do that alone. And the total for phase 1 and 2 at 1,300 units or 13,000 units would be $3,361 per unit. When you per house or per apartment. So if it was a building with 12 apartments, or that each one of those are a unit.
Yeah.
And lastly, I'll just go over an overview of our ongoing INI studies, which I believe to still be one of main priorities with the commission to address is that, and I'll show you in a second. We've completed several INI studies, and what we do is we focus on areas of the town that we believe has a problem with INI, which INI is basically inflow and infiltration, which could come from sump pumps, could come from surface drainage, it could come from a lot of aspects. We believe there's a large sump pump issue here based on what I'm about to show you. But we recently completed another study, which is also available on the GSC's website. But we started right at the very bottom we're starting right where the trunk is and working our way through on a large scale just to see, are we missing major areas that we haven't grabbed? So you can see here the current project area we recently looked at, which is basically the whole system. So what you're about to see is a graph that had a flow meter in for the entire system. The intent of the study is to identify sources of rainfall, derived inflow and infiltration, which increases hydraulic loading on the wastewater collection system during the flow of periods of rainfall. Final objective to determine the quantitative response of specific areas of the wastewater collection system of rainfall events through interpretation of flow monitoring data, planning for future projects. So again, a lot of the projects that the commission moved ahead with reconstruction were identified as high infiltration. So another example of this is we recently completed several projects or several streets in Pointe-aux-Chenes where we lined the pipes instead of excavated them. So we had them lined. Basically, it's like almost like a PVC lining, and basically turns the existing pipe new again. So we don't interfere with anybody. There's no digging. There's no interruptions. It moves rather quick. And we've actually started another program coming this year to do more lining. we had an excellent turnout of that project, and it worked quite well. So we're going to keep moving, and that's an area we don't necessarily like to get in and excavate, especially in the summer. It's not an area where you want to be digging in the summer. I can tell you that from personal experience.
It's not unless you really, really, really need to.
Exactly. And we did the lining, and the residents loved it. So next, I'm just going to show you just kind of one of the graphs we would get. And the reason I'm showing you this is just to show you the level at which the INI is in the town of Shediac. Above, you can see this part is basically the quantity of rain that happened that day. And each time you see it dip down, well, you're looking at 50 mils, 40 mils. Well, each time that dip down, you see a spike in the sanitary flows below. This red down here is basically dry flow. So this is theoretically, this is where your flow should be. So this is where the sewer actually is.
Yeah.
And when it rains, it quadruples. So it's quite like, and the other part we know too is this is the reason why we believe it has a lot more to do with sump pumps, because sump pumps can produce roughly 2 liters per second, and they come on and they just start pumping. So you can see immediately after it rains, it spikes. So the spike is instantaneous. It's not being filtered through the ground. It's not delayed by any means. It's just instantaneous.
It's getting into the pipe really quick.
It's getting into the pipe really quick, and it's flowing really fast. So our indication from that is that this is a very large sump pump issue in several areas of the town that could be cross-connected into the sewer system somehow. There's not a storm system on every street, so it's potential that some people might have them not wanting on the lawn, so they just see a pipe and they put them in, and away they go. So it's a very difficult item to monitor for the GSSC. Even if you brought in a plumber to do a check, there's nothing that stops them from just plugging it back in when they leave. So it's a difficult part. No matter how much infrastructure you do, the INI is still a rather large issue here. So, and it leaves me with some questions.
I have a counselor who's been very patient because I was waiting for the question part.
Premièrement, merci, Monsieur le maire. Merci pour la belle.
Thank you for the great presentation. It really shows that you have a vision, a mission, and it reassures me to see that I have a sense of where you're heading for the next few years. But I do have a few small questions, some technical questions. Congratulations, Joey, on your leadership there. It shows. It shows that you must not sleep at night. You seem to be so very organized. Now, this ComSewer, that's not a line. It's a main collection pipe. It's a technical word. I'll never ask that again for trunk sewer. I see the contribution that your budget speaks to 50 million. You have 30 million assured. That's been. Do you have a plan B if the other secured funding doesn't come in? Est-ce que ça vous,
we're quite confident we're going to get the funding. Right now, I know the feds have everything lined up. They're fully aware that this needs to happen, and they're fully aware that we can't move ahead without it. In the event that we, for some reason, don't get the secondary funding, we just have to make do with what we have, 32 million. We can redesign it, and we won't get the 50-year lifespan, but we will upgrade the system either way.
Okay. Je peux continuer?
Can I continue? May I continue?
Because both numbers are similar, but there's 50 million for the lagoon and there's an estimated 45 million for the lines. Those are two separate projects.
Correct. So it's
I just wanted to make sure
Yes,
everybody
sorry.
realized that.
Sorry, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a
No, just because you
It's-
listened about trunk and then jumped immediately
Yeah.
to the
Okay.
point,
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted
Okay.
to make sure.
it's a $50 million reno and a $45 million new addition.
So
and,
you have,
and we have no funding for the trunk sewer. There's no funding in place for the trunk.
so the 45 million that the last numbers,
Yeah.
that's not part of,
That's not part of it. No.
we're only talking about the infrastructure.
For the waste,
now.
for the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay. So okay.
Bonne précision.
No, it's fine.
Important to note this.
different questions now. No, it's fine. So what's the timeline for the first $50 million project?
For the wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah.
Currently, we're just waiting for confirmation for the second phase, and then we'll go into a redesign this summer, hopefully, with a tender this summer, but only to go to construction probably in the winter. What we're worried about, and we wanted to be in construction this summer, but what we were concerned about, obviously, we still didn't get all the funding yet. We don't want to go to tender with contractors already busy, because we kind of did that once, and it doesn't fare well for the price of the contract. And the other reason why this, obviously, everybody be aware, is the reason why this initially, the wastewater treatment plant was supposed to be 32 million. That was our initial estimate.
Yeah.
What happened was the pandemic happened. And when we tendered it during the period where, as you recall, gas prices were going through the roof. Well, this treatment plant was heavily driven on fuel. We had some of the biggest excavators, biggest excavation. It was so driven on fuel that all the contractors were terrified of it because they knew they were going to be on a 3-year job. They had no idea where the fuel was going. So it was reflected in the price. So it's very possible when we tender it, we can drive this down a little bit more because things have stabilized. So we're hoping we can get this a little lower.
So the next question would be with the second project, the $45 million project. Is there an appetite to proceed or from the commission, or not really? If we don't get funding,
There would need to be funding in place and for the commission. I know I've spoken with funding from the feds, and they're fully aware that the commission's already getting 50 million for the wastewater treatment
Okay.
plant. So there's not much of any room
Appetite.
here. Yeah.
the $50 million project, what's the contributions for the commission out of the 50?
It's roughly 17%.
8 million. And what's the cost for users? And I would presume when I say users, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would presume users are those that are hooked up to that particular system and not the Shkodok system. Would I be correct in presuming that?
Joey, answer that one.
No, you're not. Simply, I was asked that question, and I'll try to explain it the best I can. All of our clients are going to have been paying the environmental improvement fee. It started on all the billing 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We added
fixed it.
$25 per year the first year, $50 per year per bill the second year, and $75 this year and subsequent years. This is to create a fund, the environmental improvement fund, that we keep separate from our capital reserve fund. Okay. This fund is to pay for the upgrades to the new Cap Brûlé treatment facility, and the money left over is going to be put aside and accumulated for other projects. For example, if we have to upgrade the lagoon in Skaduk in 20 years or 30 years, there's only maybe 300-400 clients going to the Skaduk lagoon. Well, it would be a big cost if you charge only the Cap Brûlé project to the clients that are connected to the Cap Brûlé project. That's doable. But then if you do even a $2 or $3 million upgrade to the Skaduk plant, and you charge it to only the 300 and so clients that is in Skaduk, it would be very difficult for them to accommodate that. So we decided to create one big fund to pay for the big project and to pay for other big projects. And that's been explained when we created the fund. It was explained in the mail out that's sent out to all the clients, and it's explained on our website.
Oh, you have your answer.
Yeah,
We all share the pain.
I guess so.
Yeah.
That wasn't the deal when the system was created.
I'm not sure what deal you're talking
Well, the
about.
deal was that when the Shkodok system was built, the Shkodok citizens and those that were hooked up to that particular system was responsible for the system, and the Shediac system, i.e. Cap Brûlé treatment plant, was the citizens of getting connected in that particular system was responsible financially but I guess the cards have changed, and it is what it is. I'm a bit disappointed, but it is what it is, and I have.
Well, I believe, Mr. Counselor, that in the long run, if there are upgrades needed, and there will be eventually, all systems have to be
No,
upgraded.
I agree.
It would be a lot less painful if the Cap Brûlé, if we want to separate them in that way, to say that the Cap Brûlé, the Shediac citizens help pay or cost share and the upgrades of the Scoop plant. There's only 300 or 400 clients connected to the Scoop system. So we believe that in the long term, and at the time we did have representation, and everybody felt that it was the best way to proceed for everyone in the long term. So
Good, merci.
Conseiller Paul Boudreau.
Councillor Paul Boudreau.
And you're looking at the upgrade, but the upgrade is only, from what I see, it's all in Shediac. There's any plans for on the east side of the treatment plant, Goodrow office, the development on that side of the treatment plant? All your major plans are this side of the plant going up to there. Any plan for the other side?
Right now, there's no plans on that side because we don't have much of an issue capacity wise on that side yet. So right now, our main focus is on the areas that are more pressing.
Okay, and again, on the map, looking at economic development on south side of Highway 15, you mentioned the correctional facility. Is there any upgrade there? If eventually we can develop on that side of the highway, what's the plans for the sewer system?
This is still high level. So as far as a sewer system plan, we don't know what the development is yet. So as soon as they start planning a development, we can look at what the sewer system would look like on that side. But we do know now if we were to put that trunk, we know what it needs to connect to.
Okay.
So we can allow, the plan is, like it says, a long-term plan. So the plan is to have that there. So we have a plan if development decides to go on that side of the highway.
Exactly.
We're not just throwing it up and going, well, we don't know where that's going to go.
Nice to know. Another, the last one in regards to locations, Shediac Cape seemed to be the status quo. What you're planning on the Cape itself, when you're looking at is there any project, like you mentioned Shediac Cape, even the Cornwall Point area?
Yeah.
At issue, and let's say there's a major institution that wants to be developed at Shediac Cape. Can we do it?
So that's
And
where
any upgrade need to be done on that part of town?
that's where the master plan comes into play. So if there's a major development that's going to happen in that area, we'll plug it in and we'll be able to understand, is there a major upgrade required? Right now, we only know what the proposed developments are, but if as they come down the pipe, we can plug them in and we can identify, is the sewer going to be big enough? Down Cornwall Point, is it going to be big enough down Shediac Cape? And then we can identify if those need to be upgraded. So really, the majority of this relies on the master plan, in our opinion. The model is key for us understanding ahead of time what's needed. Obviously, sometimes developers want to move a lot faster, but when we get these flows and we put them in, it gives us a real strong idea, even all the way down to the wastewater treatment plant, is that if, say, you put a 300 unit apartment all the way west of Shediac, well, that has massive impacts right through the whole system. So before, we weren't able to know that. We could know the impact on the street, but we weren't going to know the impact down the whole system.
My line of question was restrictions. If we can't do something.
Yeah.
Mostly of the institution that I'm talking about, because not adequate system in place on that part of town, that would be a worry.
Correct.
Red flag for us.
Yeah. And that would be something we could pick up in the model.
That's something that, in terms of that institution, that's something that the persons who will be deciding that are aware.
Yeah.
So, of
That's it.
what our system is and where we have, not necessarily capacity issues, but depending on the size of whatever you're building, whether it's an institution, whether it's a Walmart, whether it's a, a multi-residential, whatever, at least it's nice that your model can, it's like, okay, let's plug it in here, whatever else, and then you can tell, so.
And we basically use units as residential units because it gives you the highest volume of flow and kind of gives you that buffer. So most of the time, institutions don't bring the same amount of flow as it could if that was a giant development of residential units. So we've kind of taken the worst case scenario.
Good, thank you. Conseiller Mid.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Just a quick question. On Veterans Highway, the trunk line is following underneath the trail there.
Mhm.
So I think my question was answered by Paul's question. Anything up the south side of the pipe, the new trunk line, that would be served for new developments, right? Let's say on Lena Road, developing some stuff there, pipe would serve for that, right?
If the grades meet it, yes, and if the grades don't meet it, it could just be pumped by either a private lift station or
Okay.
potentially a GSSC lift station, but that would service that.
It would serve that, okay.
Correct.
And when it comes down Ohio Road,
Mhm.
and when it comes in front of Kent Street, which
Mhm.
will be Bridge Street,
Mhm.
Eventually, would that be an incentive for the town to finish that leg, that part of the street, because there's a new trunk line going?
Potentially, they would have a discharge point for their sewer. Because we did make it deep enough. We don't see, we've outlined how far we can go with a minimum grade sewer. So that we can show you how far you can go and connect by gravity. If it's outside those limits, it can be pumped.
But are you asking if we could extend Bro Bridge by putting in the trunk? Is that?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
I believe we're gonna go down Bro Bridge Street before we get to, go down Ohio Road, sorry, before we get to Bro Bridge Street, right?
Oh, we looked at options that were not invasive to the existing infrastructure, so that's why we wanted to maintain along the trail. And also, if you go in any municipality, you'll notice that their trunk sewers usually follow a brook or or a river, because that's usually the lowest point. So we wanted to make sure that if we went along the brook, we knew we're the lowest we can get in those spots. So we're we can collect the maximum amount of flow. We had looked at going down into private developments and going through streets, but then you're jacking up the price and you're cutting into almost new streets, right? So it's not.
Yeah.
Not fun.
Section of Bro Bridge Street. or down
Oh.
Ohio Road.
No, yeah, we'd be down Ohio Road. So there could be a T for a connection point,
So
but we're not.
So it would be an advantage for the town.
Correct, yeah.
Would be an incentive maybe to finish that.
Yeah.
That part of the
You'd have-
street, yeah.
You'd have an option to discharge it
And my last question is, how big is that trunk pipe?
at 900 millimeters.
And 8 inches, how much is that?
So 90 centimeters wide,
Yeah.
so
36.
three
36,
roller lane.
yeah.
36 inch, okay.
Yeah, I'm a millimeters man, so.
Yeah.
So trois règles de l'art.
It's a big pipe.
Yeah.
My car won't fit.
3
in it.
rulers wide.
Well, thank you much for that presentation. It's quite enlightening. There's quite a bit of pipe to get done. It's, but part of it is going to be there. In terms of the new main trunk and lift station upgrades, the upgrades can happen after the trunk's installed.
Correct. We just want to
Although obviously the upgrades need to happen in order to get the flow uphill that way on up Riverside Drive, obviously.
Mhm.
So, okay, so that can well, of course, you need to bust it out to get it up there, one,
Mhm.
and then other upgrades might be able to happen over a period of time or kind of short period of time. I don't know.
Lift station 3 could be done in its own 2 phases. So you could, for example, be working on lift station 3, the existing station would be still running, everything's still working as is. You put that new lift station in place, it's in place. Next phase would be putting the force main. Once that's in, you make the transition from the existing lift station to the new lift station and go. So you can kind of break it up, but ideally we'd probably make it all one contract just so it'd be a wash to try to do them both. Like they're 30 million or 25 or another. So it'd probably be best to just do it all.
A few here and there.
Yeah, once a
Okay.
few here and there.
All right. Merci beaucoup.
And if you don't mind, I'll add,
Sure.
This is based off multiple presentations, which I believe are all on GSCC's website. So anybody can go look at the full presentations for each one and get a little bit more information off it as well.
That's good.
Roger?
Conseil Paul?
For the construction period, mentioned 3 or 4 years. And you're right over the very, very popular cycling trail down my Route 15 and the Brook
Mhm.
section. Does that mean that installation is going to be closed for 3 or 4 years?
No, the trunk sewer would probably only take 6 months.
Oh, okay.
So it's the lift station and force main would be the rest of it. The trunk sewer would go in. We did the existing trunk sewer. I was actually the inspector on the existing trunk sewer 12 years ago, and we did it in a year and a half, and it was about 5 kilometers. This is not 5 kilometers, so about a year you'd be done.
Nice to know.
Yeah, and we'd likely do this work in the winter as well.
Oh, that's
Easy
even
to do.
better.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup. Thank you much. Yeah.
Il n'y avait pas d'autres questions, Monsieur le maire? C'est
No
correct.
more questions, Your Worship? Yes? Great. I wish you a good night. So, do we have stuff to do? Lots of stuff to do. So next item in terms of municipal operations, water infrastructure update.
Better smelling. Much or less expensive. We hope, anyway.
Yes, your worship, council, it's a very pleasure to be here before you this evening to provide you a brief presentation on the East End Long-Term Water Study that we completed not too long ago. Just to introduce myself, I'm Gordon Wasson. I'm a senior civil municipal engineer with EXP in Moncton. And my personal background with Shediac, I've worked on a number of water system projects for the town over the years. I've become very, very familiar with it. So I'll just give you a brief presentation. Sure. On the study. I guess the first question is just to identify the study area, and it focused on the east end of the town. And essentially it was sort of between Ohio Road and Bellevue Heights area and extended to the south of Route 15 as well. Now this area, it's identified as an excellent opportunity for development. It's got a lot of potential. And Bob contacted me one day and we talked about it, and the need was there to look at this area in more detail, primarily to see what would happen to the town's water system if this area fully developed.
Okay.
And just the current zoning in the study area. This is a copy of the town zoning map. We made one small change to it, but on the north side, you can see that a lot of the area is all zoned as R3 type development. There's a lot of opportunity there for developers, perhaps in the future, to look at apartment buildings, multi-unit type buildings, much higher density than what's in most of the town right now. And when you go across the highway, well, there's the Southeast Regional Detention Center, opportunities for possibly future commercial development, as well as a campground. So the objectives of the study is, first one was to answer the question, how will development impact the municipal water system overall? As this area starts out and it keeps on and it fully develops and fully builds out. Another objective was to identify key water system upgrades that would be required to meet the projected water demands for this area. And the third thing was to identify the projects and provide what we call an opinion of probable construction cost for the key upgrades. So just a little bit of background on the town's existing water system. Right now, the system operates on two pressure zones. There's a gravity zone that supplies the lower elevations of the town. And there's a boosted zone where water is pumped from via booster pumps at the Bridge Water Treatment Plant. It boosts the water up to a higher elevation, and it services the higher elevations in the town. Presently, there's 5 active wells that supply the entire town. 2 of the wells require water treatment and the other 3 don't. Bellevue Heights well, we call it well number 12. It's very nearing completion and it should be online very shortly, but it'll also require treatment. So that'll be 3 wells in the town that are going to require treatment here. The water treatment plant, it presently has 2 filtration units installed in it. One was installed, I believe, about 2004, and then I believe in 2006, the second unit was installed. But the building itself is designed that a 3rd unit could be installed in it. There's raw water mains, and what they do is from the wells, these raw water mains, they pipe all the water in the town, and it all basically passes through the treatment facility at on Bro Bridge. Whether it needs water treatment or not, that's where it all ends up because all the water is chlorinated in one spot before it goes out to distribution. Then there's the distribution mains. They go along, they distribute the water out to all the customers. There's booster pumps. Like I mentioned, they boost the water from a lower pressure up to a higher uh, pressure zone. And there's 3 of these pumps that are located at the water treatment plant. And there's 2 water storage tanks. There's one very visible. It's a well-known landmark right on Bro Bridge, right beside the water storage tank. And the other one was commissioned in 2018 or 19 on Ohio Road. So when we started looking at this, we always look at the key criteria, like what are the main things that a water system has to do to service their customers. So typically, in accordance with guidelines, the town's design standards, the recommendations are that everyone in the town should have pressure roughly 40 to 80 PSI. We all know that sometimes that's not always the case, but it's a guideline and do our best to try and achieve that. Fire flows, we assess those at we call it a 20 PSI residual in the system. So at any point in the water distribution system, we try to maintain the water pressure of at least 20 PSI during a fire flow event. And we use typical design guidelines of 1,100 US gallons a minute. That would be for say for a residential area, or up to 2,600 US gallons a minute. That would be for an R3 zone, multi-unit apartment building zone. The booster pumping capacity is based on having 2 pumps being able to provide the flow. So basically at the Bro Bridge treatment plant, 2 of those booster pumps would have to be able to provide all the water to the boosted zone. The 3rd pump that is there is just there as a standby in case there's a mechanical failure or some other unforeseen event that one pump goes out of service. Yeah. The volume of storage in the town's water system, there's guidelines. It's we generally follow that we call Atlantic Canada Water and Wastewater Association. They provide recognized guidelines for all municipal water systems. The most recent one was published in 2022, and that's what we follow in terms of assessing how much water storage, like how many storage tanks do you need in your water system. And the third thing is, it's very important, is no matter what, every developer should be conducting a hydrant flow test as part of the design of their development, just to be able to verify in the field exactly how much water is available and at what kind of pressure, because that has a big bearing on the design of their buildings. Mm-hmm. So we went through an exercise. You heard Chris talk about a model of the sewer system. Well, we do the exact same thing with the water system. We have a hydraulic model that's been built. Actually, it's been built a number of years ago, and we just keep it up to date as time goes by and all the upgrades are done in the system. We keep the model up to date. So at any given time, if a development comes along or to use it for planning purposes, we can use the model. It'll tell us, spit out results very, very quickly. And we can flag things, issues before they actually happen. So this diagram here, it shows a number of upgrades that we flagged just pertaining to this area. And these upgrades are based on the area being fully developed. So it's starting from greenfields today right to it's fully developed. So
okay.
in the long run, this is kind of the things we're looking at. So some of the key things are down on Bro Bridge. There's a piece of water main that's actually missing there to connect it to Ohio Road. Right along here, connects from about Germain Street through to the back of the Kent property. And that'll probably be installed when Bro Bridge Extension is built. Um, Up in this area, one of the key things that we identified for this area in here to develop and have adequate water supply is a primary water main, a main 12-inch water main extending from Ohio Road across to Bellevue Heights. That's a real important link that we've identified. We've shown it as an alignment through along an NB power easement along the highway. But obviously, what'll happen here as this area develops, there's a no road network in place. The water main will actually follow along the road. To strengthen the network even further, we identified putting a highway crossing in, across Route 15, and running the water main back along to the Southeast Regional Detention Center and connecting onto the existing main there. And what these mains will do, it'll complete a major loop, primary loop in the boosted zone. In the future, someday down the road, it wouldn't happen anytime soon, but we're looking at probably extending a water main along Lino Road down to the Ohio Road interchange in that direction. And when you look at a development like this, okay, there's water demands going to be required here, but sometimes there's things that happen in other parts of the system that this will trigger more water demand. So one of the things that will probably be happening is going to put pressure on and this should come sooner rather than later, but the installation of the third filtration unit at the water treatment plant, potentially another water supply source at some point. It could be maybe on the south side of the highway, or potentially even down in this area somewhere. So my slide here, I just highlighted the projects again. I just we put some dollar values on them. So obviously, I think I went a little easier than the sewer projects, but a little
We
lighter.
appreciate that.
Well, this is only for one part of the water system, but
Sounds good.
the extension of Bro Bridge Extension, that should read from Jermaine towards Ohio Road, not Geraldine.
Okay.
We put that as a high priority project because that's a key link. Ohio Road to Bellevue Heights, that was the other key main link that we noted. We put medium on that, and that's primarily because that'll only happen as that area develops. The connection across Route 15 to Lino Road to connect to the existing water main, again, a medium priority. That'll happen as that area develops as well. Lino Road toward Ohio Road interchange, that's a very low priority. That'll only happen as if there's commercial development or something like that over there at that time. Well 9, I kind of missed that one, but Well 9, it was built back in, I believe it was 1999, and it included some old technology. And the way the raw water main works, when well 12 comes on, that's Bellevue Heights, there's going to be 3 wells all pumping into the same line at the same time, possibly.
Okay.
And when that happens, and we've had Scott Glant, your operator, he confirmed it with us. We looked at it one day with him, is if well 9 is running, say well 12 or well 11 comes on at the same time, the flow from well 9 drops off considerably. It's just a hydraulics issue. It's got to do with the motor controls, the way it was designed back in the day. And the technology was good back then, but it's changed significantly since. So we're recommending a small upgrade in there as a high priority.
Now, just for sake of arguments, where well 9 would be?
That's on La Rosette.
Oh, that's next to my house. Okay.
Yeah. And well,
Yeah,
11 is
that's
just
about
around the
99.
corner.
Yeah.
And upgrade the boosted zone supply pumps, that is actually becoming a fairly high priority. At least some planning should be probably begin for it. What happens is as the demand increases, those pumps turn on more and off more. And right now, those pumps are at their maximum capacity. They were originally installed around 2000, 2004 era. They're 20 to 25 years old, which is a typical planning horizon for them anyway.
Yeah.
They were upgraded, I believe, in 2011. And at that time, they were maxed straight out. They just can't produce anymore.
These are the supply pumps at the treatment plant.
Yes, the
Okay.
ones that supply the boosted zone.
Okay.
So they are starting, there's signs there that they're starting to move towards their higher end of their capacity. And so we flagged that as a high item. Some of the wells, there's 2 or 3 of them that for some unknown reason, they have what we call a safe yield that was established back when they were designed and built, and it's approved by Department of Environment. But there's 2 or 3 of them, for some reason, their flow rate is less. It's really unknown at this time, so we recommended to have a look into those, see what can be done to rehabilitate them, rather than drilling another new well right away.
Okay.
Take a look at what's there and just how it can be rehabilitated. The third filtration plant at the water treatment plant is a medium priority as well. Potentially develop an additional supply source. Eventually, too, as demand increases, so does the need for a supply source. And we put that down as a medium priority. And it doesn't hurt to start at least the planning stage for something like that early on. It's just that when you get into it, there's a lot of environmental approvals and it takes quite some
time, yeah.
time.
So you can at least find the water first.
Yes, it's good to have that identified and have it in your back pocket so that when the time comes,
You can move forward.
you
Okay.
can move forward. It's not going to take as much time. And just as an example, the Bellevue Heights well, that took the best part of 2 years, start to finish. That's the kind of time, and plus that well was already drilled on the property
Yeah.
prior to that. So anyway, it does take a considerable amount of time. And the other option we flagged was potentially looking on the south side of the highway, an entirely new well field altogether in greenfield lands where there's really nobody around and it's easy to protect the water source.
Mhm.
But that comes with a bit more of an investment in terms of dollars because the wells on the other side of the highway, the raw water's got to get pumped across the highway, down Sackville Street, all the way to the Bridge treatment plant. So anyway, so we flagged that as medium as well. So those are the kind of the things that come out of this. And some of the key takeaways that we found were, as you can see, the town's water system is kind of a complicated thing. There's a lot of moving parts to it. You change one thing over here, well, something over here is going to change next. It'll impact and affect something else. And depending on how fast the east end develops, that'll have a big bearing on the rate at which the upgrades need to be done and the schedule for implementation. If the area develops, all of a sudden it's going to fully develop over 5 years, which I don't think would ever happen, but if it did, it would put a tremendous strain on the town's water system. And, but if it's over 10 to 15 years, well, it's a lot better.
Okay.
And some of the high priority items, they include completion of the water main connection on Bridge extension when that piece of road gets constructed, the upgrades to well number 9, the controls there, and to review the current reduced pumping rate of the existing wells that are affected. If something can be done in the short term and increase the output from those wells, so that could be done may be done quite easily and at much cheaper cost than drilling another well. And although it's a medium priority and preparing for the longer term plan, flagged here too, the water supply source is very important because just the length of time it does take to identify it and go through all the environmental permits. And especially across the south side of the highway, there's a number of different things involved to go over there. There's be some exploratory work, land acquisitions, test drilling, and then all the environmental approvals. So it takes quite a while. Anyway, that's kind of a summary of what we found, what we did, and what we found. And I'd be very pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. And I see Conseil Paul Boudreau has.
Just one, can you go back to your price list, please? Priority list, I'd call it, yeah.
This one?
I'm curious,
Yep.
I'm curious, it's the same length when you look at the first four items, and the first one is only 275,000. And the other ones are 1.3, 1.4. How come there's so much difference in price for the same length of work?
It's not same length, it's same width. C'est la largeur de la pipe.
The
300 millimeter?
The 300 millimeter is the pipe diameter.
Start selling pipes.
The length of it is significantly different.
Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good, but you do have a 300, 300, 300,
I could see-
250. I know what you mean, but
I could see
that's
that.
the
could get
size,
a
the
bit
width of the
confusing.
pipe.
Yes. Yeah.
Conseil Emile O'Brien.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Just a curiosity question. You say we have boosted systems of water system and we have gravity system.
Yes.
In the event of a power failure, will the people get water in their houses if
Yes.
they're on it's gravity fed system? Yes.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
not the boosted system though.
Yes, the boosted system as well.
Oh, as well. Oh, okay.
There's actually a standby generator at the water treatment plant
Oh, that's right. Okay.
that powers everything. It'll run all the booster pumps. Plus, there's the 2 water storage tanks as well.
Okay.
There's quite a volume of water in there, and it's good for it's there for different reasons, and one of them is emergency storage in case the power ever is out.
Thank you. That was me.
Sounds good. Conseil Roland Cormier.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Thank you very much for enlightening presentation. It really shows the challenges and the the problems we have in our system. So thank you for that. I appreciate that as being a newcomer. There's something I just want to clarify. Maybe I misunderstood, or maybe the water treatment plant. We have two treatment plants into the you call it the filtration
Yes,
system.
to filtrate.
You have two as we speak.
Yes.
I presume one is running fully and the other one's a backup.
No, actually, right now, both of them run at the same time.
So what happens if one breaks down?
It would cut back on the water supply you could treat. And you'd be relying more on the wells that don't need treatment.
Okay.
Can you tell them what
That's,
they're,
there's kind of a fine line there. it's
So
can
maybe
you tell them what they're treated for, what those units do? They treat manganese, right?
manganese.
They don't treat for, to make it potable, to make it safe to drink. It's to remove minerals from the water,
Yes.
but it would still be safe to drink. It just tastes a little different. typically.
Manganese, it's historically, been classified as a nuisance. Sometimes people notice it when they're doing laundry, if they put some Javex in the water.
Okay.
Sometimes you might notice something black or black stain appeared on white clothing, and that's typically the cause of it.
so
Manganese.
if one broke down, I'm just thinking of the third one as a spare one. Okay.
And
That's the purpose of the question.
that's the purpose of the third unit. Yes.
Okay, fine, but it's not as it's a very important because it's water.
Mm.
But my definition of the system not working is the water is not drinkable. and as his worship is saying, that's not the case.
You could get by
Okay, that's,
if you had to,
okay.
in an emergency, yes.
Okay,
Mm.
and this might be a stupid question or might be the best question you ever had, so let's try it.
Well,
Okay.
I'm game for anything.
We just had you seen a presentation from the Source Commission,
Yes,
and it's certainly not the same liquid going into the pipes. But are they're looking at upgrading some pipe systems. Do we work, do we work together when there's a hole somewheres in Shediac and we need to upgrade the system? Are we permitted to have the pipes close or like it's certainly a different function, those pipes? Are we permitted to do that? I'm just trying to cut costs here, but not cut costs to any
typically, the sewer would be down here, and the main would be up here. It's higher. Typically, that's the way they're arranged in the trench. So that if there ever is a leak in the sewer, it's not going to contaminate the water line.
and,
Robert?
But-
and we try to coordinate when we dig a hole to try to work together
Always.
to not to dig a second hole, a second hole.
Monsieur le Directeur.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Généralement, c'est pas une bonne pratique de l'industrie d'émettre.
Generally, it's not a good industry practice to put them close by together. So if we rebuild the street, we'll do all the services on the street, so during the same project. So these are more like special cases, like we are surveying areas that are not served. So as we define those projects, like some effort will be made to take, for example, if we build a street, like we'll pass like the like all those pipes at the same time, water sewer.
We have a lovely black cover on top with lines. So, for traffic.
Exactly.
Sounds good.
And if there's such a case that the sewer and the water at the same elevation, they have to be horizontally 10 feet apart
Sounds
to
good.
protect.
Thank you. Monsieur DG?
Well, no, my question wasn't for Gordon, but if he's done, I just wanted to, I know we focused a lot on some of the challenges that our systems are facing. Mais je voulais inviter très rapidement, il n'était pas à l'ordre du jour, mais dans 2 minutes, c'est que notre directeur du développement économique et tourisme peut parler de la bonne nouvelle qu'on a eue la semaine dernière. J'aimerais qu'il partage avec les membres du conseil, s'il vous plaît.
I wanted to invite our Director of Economic Development, like to share the good news. So thank you, Victor. I just wanted to address like for the values of construction building permits. So we did not get the report January, February, March, April, and May. So during the municipal reform, like we had adapted like the LSC for Shediac, Cape Scodouk, and Pointe-Chute. So the building permits, like they will be through like the Shediac entity. So the report started to come out, and we will prepare a report. But I wanted to share with you, like I did the total, the calculation, 71 million, 160,000 and $121 like value for this year. The first 5 months, we already we over like the record of last year. But these are great news and exciting. But if you look at what Robert and his team like are putting in place with the master plan, and we're looking at this, well, it's because if you want to continue with development, if you want to be able to serve all of this, some lines they're starting not to have any services. Some pipes, like they're bringing liquid, and it's very important for the developers to be close to those pipes. And they need like a trunk line, they need like some services like water and sewer service. So if we look at together like the administration, so what's coming for 25, 2026, 2027, and we will be like in the lines that don't have any services. So we don't start planning today. If we do not bring this information, we will not be able to have building permits, the same value for today, like in 2027. I think it's a good exercise we're doing. And I think it's positioning the municipality real well to think seriously what are the priorities and how we go forward, not only to, we want all kind of nice project in Chediac, but we have to maintain a balance of everything. Thanks for letting me talk. If you have any question, I will answer them. Councilor Boudreau. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Danny, for the information. So the amount you mentioned, like Villa Providence, is it part of the equation? And with the, because of confidentiality, I cannot also give the amount for each permit, which was 71 millions. And I can see this project was one of a significant value. I would say probably maybe a little bit more than half. So there's still a good growth like going on like in our municipality, Councilor Boudreau. Thank you. So when we hit the 69 million last year, we thought, wow. So what will we do? But it's true, like we had the ones like for the new Maison Providence instead of Villa, like the new nursing home. It would be important, but it would have an impact. But in 2018, we had a commercial development. It had an impact too. So they're coming once in a while, but still have to plan like for the development. So they continue on an annual basis, like to get the amounts we have. But it's good news. It's not bad. So now that we talk about pipes and the one of them water coming in, the other one water coming out. We have Phil and Phil, Mr. Robichaud, he came back to see us, and this is information to share with the members of the council for rezoning a request for a major project. At least it's what it could be essentially. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, council members. So this evening, I will present you like a rezoning request we received for a development proposed by Alexandre Giroir. It's a development of 600 unit with 4 buildings. He's the same individual who are building like the buildings on Beaubridge Street. Phase 1 is done, and they're starting phase 2. So today is more like for information purposes. So request was made, but no resolution or process starting today. Like it's just to show 117 units. So if you want maybe like to approve it at a later date, just some context. So this project is in East Chediac, is specifically in the in Domaine des Faisans and Domaine Beauséjour. These are 2 subdivisions. So when the council adopted like a subdivision, that's what they were called, and all like the subdivision was accepted at the same time. So the project is close like to Route 15, and in here we receive a lot of vacant properties, like vacant property west, and it was vacant, but now I think some houses are being built. And once those 2 subdivisions were planned, it was supposed to be residential development, like a low density residential development. So this type of development was not the plan, like when we were planning for those subdivisions. So zoning is R2. It's average density, so it's a maximum of 6 units. North and east, we see it's the same zoning. But if you go more east, it seems to be R3, like it's high density. But just west is zone R1, which is low density, that only allow like a single family dwelling. So the request is to change the zoning of property combination of 3 from R2 to R3. It's only part of those 2 properties. So this is a close-up of the rezoning. So Mr. Giroir is not the owner of those properties. It's the AML House and LMC Construction. So they are the developers like building on those 3. And the applicant wants to change like the zoning before purchasing the property because it's interesting to have a high density development on this properties. So the construction, so he's focusing of finishing the tree building on the Bow Bridge. He does not intend to develop those properties like if the zoning pass within, not before the next 5 years. So in theory, he's looking like to start maybe 5 years from now. That's why he would say that. That's what he told us. So this is the project. So we do not have like elevation or more detail. It's really like the site plan we have for now. It's only like conceptual. It represents 600 units. So the building is like a Y, 170 units each, and the one in the V shape, 130 units. So there's also like some a leisure installation, like a pool, pickleball field, and also like a connection to the train. We see there are some buildings also for storing on right on the property. So the building, they have a height of 20 meters and 6 stories. So if we compare like of the building of Bow Bridge with the same owner, the same applicant, Mr. Jawa built, is 21 meters and 5 stories. So it's a flat roof and it's the same height as an extra story.
And the reason that the sewer question was raised first is to say that the sewer capacity in the system today is not sufficient to accommodate that development. So Mr. Gallant presented a project in 2 phases. Phase 1 is thing 2, the gravity fed line, and phase 2 is the red line that is under pressure. Phase 1 is necessary before he would going forward with the project. With the current infrastructure, the project is not allowed. In terms of water, they also summarized that work is required in the region to increase the pressure in the system. It's foreseen that some of the work to be done, that you would need a private pumping station in the buildings. So just mention traffic as well. So for Domaine des Faisans and Beau Séjour, it represents 354 units. Those are buildings that are built and permits that we were granted that we built in the near future. This is compared to 600 units. So we see that the proposed development is nearly double what is existing there now. So I'd like to mention that the development was designed or built at the start. The intention was to have it be low density. So these are not collector streets that were designed to accommodate a high traffic volume. We're gathering information to see if the existing streets are able to accommodate all that traffic. However, the plan submitted shows a future connection on Bellevue Road. Nothing official, but it's something that they've indicated in their plans. Here you see the streets without a future connection or collector route. All of that traffic would have to be funneled through the low density residential route to get to Main or to Brobridge Street. So in terms of drainage, this type of development of this size will take zero net. The way that they do this to get zero net, they're proposing a retention basin southeast of the property, where the retention basin is proposed. It's half on a piece of land owned by the town of Shediac. The green is owned by the town of Shediac. It's also a public use land, and usually within 15 meters of a water course. Anything less than 30 meters will take approval of the environment. I learned today that in terms of public use land for Domaine des Faisans, what was proposed, I'm just going to try to get the mouse here. It was proposed here for the public use land for Domaine de Faisan, the building seems to step onto an area that was not foreseen to be public use land. Now, speak of the municipal plan right now. The municipal plan, the way it works, it's divided all the sectors of the town into boroughs, and in each borough there's a vision of how that sector should be developed. So development here is in borough 14, in the Bellevue borough, and that borough is characterized by lots of empty lots, large empty lots that would be good for residential development. There's even proposals, let's say, like taking into account future needs of the town of Shediac and to promote increased density in the borough. So it highlights that it might be a good spot for high density. So in terms of the town of Shediac's vision, it's a good sector for high density. And that's why we saw R3 zoning near Ohio and near the Main. It's a sector that that is identified as being propitious for favorable for high density. I'll just go through this quickly. Today it's at high in major lines. They would need some variances for the project. So the first one, the most significant one, is to increase the height, 15 meters, 4 to 5 stories, the maximum today. And he's proposing 20 meters, 6 stories. It's an increase of 33%. It's pretty significant. Also putting buildings in the front, side buildings, and further from the street. Usually you want buildings closer to the street, but some buildings are located farther. It's because they're buildings and the access is a bit wider than what's allowed, but that's a variance that we often recommend. It's a question of traffic and something major. And the last is a potential variance to the modifications that the council put that next week will require 15 meters. And as R1, it would be 12 meters. It doesn't observe the new regulations being considered by the council, just to raise that for you. So in conclusion, so the borough seems to promote high density residential, and the municipal plan would seem to support the plan, but however, the staff is of the opinion is premature. When we saw the presentations earlier, there are some investments, pretty significant investments that the town would have to do to accommodate this type of project. So unfortunately, the infrastructure does not exist to accommodate the project as it stands right now. The council's options, it's as always to proceed with the request, refuse the request, or request more information to be covered at a future date. And if you want to proceed with the request, that's the timetable that we've prepared. 17th July is recommendation of the PRAC committee, public audience on 28th of August, and last readings could be in September. Essentially the same timetable as the file we saw last week. Please note that during the public hearing, we'll send notices to neighbors within 100 meters. They'll be advised of this file. And so concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. As we saw, the infrastructure, well, we can't do it just yet. The infrastructure would have to be there. We know that there's needs for infrastructure just for the municipality as well. It might fall into place, no, not today, but is planned for over the next few years, over the next several years. It's still, we're still wondering when this governmental manna will fall from the sky, but it's something that we might foresee. With the infrastructure, it's doable. There are solutions that have been identified. Perfect. Councillor Paul, question. I'm a little confused. The presentation that we had for water, the main line, I was looking at it, popped up. They show all the zones that's there. It's R3, 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 R3. Just now, the presentation that we had, I'm not sure what his name was, but Gordon, that's what I knew this was coming after. And Phil, you're saying this is all R2. Which one is it really? This is the map that we showed that's the right zoning. Because I'm deducing a few things here. I would imagine that when they designed the water system, they took a worst case scenario and imagine if it was R3. In the villa, a commercial along Ohio, behind, it's a big piece of R3 already. After that, they put R3 where there's not some right now. They're planning, say, look, if it's fully developed, if it's full of units, what would the flow rate be that would be required? Well, thank you. Well, that clarifies things. What's the value of such a project? Maybe can Danny answer that, or the developer? What's the value? How much property taxes would such a project bring to the city coffers for other infrastructure and other services? Large amounts for sure. Projects like that vary between 225 to 285,000 a unit. So, sorry, what's the amount? It's a $150 million project or so. The developer is here. He might be able to answer it more directly. I'm just giving to you based on my experience and looking at those projects in terms of value of those units. In terms of assessment, it's done by the province of New Brunswick. They'll do an assessment, can vary from 110,000 to 135,000 per unit, and that gives you an assessment value, and that's your taxation rate is based on that. Just do the math. We could do the math and make a report in the business case. If we're speaking of future plans, it's really great. I congratulate the administration in doing these future plans, and we need to know what investment well, maybe not benefit from. In other words, such a development, it can help us to offer other services to citizens. It's let's remember that there's 600 units of water and 600 units of sewer. I'd like to see the figures after this. When people criticize us, who ask us questions for large infrastructure, we can say, well, I can make a business case and I will send it to the members of the council and the members of the public. I know it's far away. We're not breaking ground tomorrow, but I would appreciate that. I alluded to planning. This project, I don't think the developer is ready to put shovels in the ground before 4 or 5 years. There's other land that they're developing in the municipality, and the timing is not there in the market. Question of zoning today, before buying the land, you would need to make sure that the zoning is there to be able to use that land, to be able to do what he wants to do. That's the question on the table right now. There's conditions, and Phil identified these conditions. Thank you, Danny. So for the commission, is this something that was considered? Direct access via the 15? Through that development or adjacent to development to lighten it? An exit ramp, you mean? To lighten it? Perhaps to lower the worries of the citizens. Like there's 400 units net borough there. We're nearly doubling the population. You could cut through Ohio Road. That's the accessibility. Can't answer this question until there's a traffic study done. But they'll be able to give you all those details. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Paul. Alexandre, do you just want to clarify something? Mr. Giroir, Mr. Mayor, councillors, your worship, councillors, it's a $200 million project for the 600 units. Clearly, we're not planning to build this in the near future. As you know, I do apartment blocks building on the Bro Bridge, 2 years of construction. Some things will change for this project, but we're going to use cement and wood, better construction. There's less questions of fireproofing. The 4 apartment blocks will need fire pumps, obviously. We know that already. We're planning on fire pumps within each apartment block. Each block will have its own pump. We'll have far fewer problems that when you build one, that will have its a pump. It's good to know it's not for just now. The reason for the rezoning application is there's no residents there right now. The owners of the lot want to get rid of them. If the council decides that it's not the way for that place for that project, I need to move on to other things. That's why I've made the application right now. And if it's R3, we agree. Yeah, there's limits on both sides. Questions of water, questions of sewers on your side. On my end, it's to get ready to build them in the future. It's all for future development of the town of Shediac. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Emil, thank you, your worship. A few comments. I think the town of Shediac doesn't have any choice but to proceed with developing infrastructure for this. The reason I'm saying this, based on the long-term planning report that was designed for the sewage commission in 2019, is pretty recent. Crandall Engineering, now Englobe. It also included projections in terms of the growth of the Shediac towns of Shediac's population. So they're projecting those projections in 2018. There was a population of 7,495 people. It projected a population in 2043 of 20,277 277 in Shediac. Now it's 2023. We're up to 11,000 in Shediac. With the other territories, well, yes, but nonetheless, we're at 11,000. The others had projected that for 2043. We're 20 years ahead of it. The project, the 50-year project, it would be 20,000 people in Shediac. I think we'll see 20,000 people in Shediac. I think that this infrastructure project should be done, no matter what, not just to accommodate the developer. Well, yes, to accommodate the developer, but anybody else who wanted to do development in that part of the town. No choice. We'd have to do it. We have to plan for the future. Well, it shouldn't be later. It should be as soon as possible to plan for the future from the start. It's all Paul said. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. Those are my comments. So I think it's important that part of the city town be developed with infrastructure, like Mr. Giroir wants to do, and others might want to do. It's weird. There's a bit of feedback. It's the mic, I think, or too loud, or okay. I'll turn you off. Councillor Murray Lloyd.
Firstly, I'd like to congratulate this developer on his vision. I think this is fantastic. We need a lot of that. Unfortunately, I'm sitting here from a previous presentation where we need $50 million to develop an infrastructure. And we haven't written a letter. And it was clearly stated on a previous presentation that it might not be that easy to get $50 million because we just got 47. So we, and I talk we here, we have to do some serious thinking to attract the rest of this money to satisfy these gentlemen with the vision. And we can talk and we can listen to all the presentations, but if we don't get at it, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
He's right. Councillor Rodin, thank you, Mr. Giroir, for that presentation. It shows that you have a vision, and we thank you for your vision. It's a technical question here, and you mentioned it, but I just want to confirm it. Right now, there's no R1 around the property that you want to buy. Yes, to the west or to the left. To the left. Lake Joan. No, Joan, light yellow. It's on Jarmen. No, it's up top of Châtellerault Street in that section. Rue Manon, Manon Street. Ah, now I see it. R1's a bit further above there. Perfect, great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Robichaud. As I said, it was a learning session to become aware of things.
Information session, so we got an update on both systems, anyway. Donc, nous n'avons pas de affaires non
So
terminées.
there's nothing, no unfinished business to discuss and no new business. Mr. CAO, the developer would have liked to have spoken to you if it's possible. Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. More information is never a bad thing. Thank you, Danny. We spoke at the start to have R1, R2, R3. I think there's something was proposed in terms of R1 and R2, R3 subdivisions with a buffer zone of a certain distance that was proposed last week by a citizen. And in other cities, towns like Dieppe and Moncton, they made that proposal a long time ago. As the developers, we worked with the city to make sure everyone was happy. Even if we had R2 between the R1 and the R3, to have a certain reasonable buffer zone to accommodate the project, R1 to R3. That sounds good. Thank you very much. And so I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you. Ah, yeah. So, plusieurs de vous m'ont demandé de jouer au
So
golf.
many of you asked to play golf for the Chamber of